This is the New American Constitution. Eager undergraduates studying American constitutional development in the fall of 2022 engaged in a thought experiment and redrafted the original framers' Constitution.
I'm Christopher Ulrich. Article 2 of the Framers' Constitution defines and limits the U.S. presidency. It specifies his election, it specifies his presidential powers, and it specifies his relationship to the Congress and the judicial branch.
I'm Maggie Hodge. The question is, what changes we did not make to the New American Constitution, Article 2, and why? We decided to add language to the Electoral College to clarify it, however, we did not change it. We decided that since the powers of government must remain separate and balanced, lest they be concentrated in the hands of one or a few thus ready for abuse, the executive powers must remain separate from the legislative powers. We considered defining Commander-in-Chief and what duties and title that would grant, but we decided against it for fear of not listing all of them, or in case the duties of the title were not to change in the future. We did not change presidential powers, nor did we change presidential impeachment. Even though we made multiple changes to Article 2 of the New American Constitution, these are the changes we did not make.
The question is, what changes did we make to Article 2 of the New American Constitution, and why? First, we looked at the 27 amendments and found 10 which applied either to the presidency or to voting, both of which Article 2 addresses. Of these 10, we decided to incorporate 9. First, we specifically addressed the District of Columbia and chose to not grant it votes in the Electoral College, simply because our nation is founded upon states, and the District of Columbia is not a state. Next, we moved on to voting, and after incorporating those amendments applying there, we changed the language from on account of sex for the 19th Amendment to on account of being a man or a woman. Our reasoning for this is that we would like to be very clear in our language that voting cannot be limited on the basis of one's sexual identity, rather than on the basis of one's sexual behavior. The word sex is both a noun and a verb, and man and women are both clearly nouns, so we made clarity there. Next, we added in to the language from the giving the vote to former slaves. We added in language of ethnicity, because in our modern context we use ethnicity very much, including on the U.S. Census, and we decided that no more should someone be prevented from voting for his skin color than for being Polish or Irish or Caribbean. We incorporated specific language stating that non-citizens are not allowed to vote in federal elections. This hardly needs to be said, but we believe it will provide some great clarity for future generations. Moving on, we addressed presidential eligibility. We obviously included the 22nd Amendment and parts of the 14th Amendment saying no one having been a traitor can run for office. But specifically, we added in 2 provisions regarding age. Firstly, we added in a provision saying that any candidate for the presidency over the age of 65 when running for office for the presidency, must take publicly a psychological evaluation. We decided to do this because the presidency is a high-stress job and one that really requires a high performer, and we would hate for one of our candidates to get into office and then not be able to fulfill his constitutional duties. Next, we incorporated a clause specifying that no candidate for election to the presidency may be chosen if he has not reached 80 years or being over the age of 80. We decided to incorporate this for much the same reasons as the provision about a cognitive test at 65. And additionally, because looking at what the Catholic Church does with its bishops saying this is a high-stress job, we need high performers, so 80 is a bit of a cutoff for them. We said 80 is a bit of a cutoff for us. We also added at the end of the presidential oath to office, "So help me God." This is a common phrase for in courtrooms, and we felt it was apt to include in our presidential oath, seeing as we're one nation under God, and there is an authority above our government. In Section 2, we added in specific language about the President being Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces and the reserves of the state. He's not merely the President, or he's not merely the Commander-in-Chief of the Army and the Navy, but of all the armed forces and the reserves of the states. We incorporated additionally more congressional checks on presidential powers. Specifically, the Congress may, in a supermajority vote of 6/10, rule out any executive order which may rule out any executive order with a 6/10 vote of each house. At the end of Section 2, we added a limiting clause saying that the President does not have powers which are not given to him by Article 2 of the Constitution. For Sections 3 and 4, we merely incorporated the 20th Amendment and 25th, and outside of that, there was no additional changes we included.
I'm Ben Croner, and I believe that Article 2 of the new American Constitution will last for the next 100 years because it adds clarity to the vagueness of the framers' Constitution that was set for the last 245 years prior.